refreshed, a light sheen of athletic sweat glowing on his skin. Lying down on the job again, huh? Jack teased, stepping over Jeanette's legs. Jeanette glared up at him from the carpet. You were supposed to help us fix this couch instead of out riding your bike. I was doing it for you, Jack protested, setting his helmet on the kitchen counter. For us. I gotta keep in shape, don't I? To protect you two. Old watchdog Jack, that's me. Well, old watchdog Jack was supposed to be back here an hour ago to help, Shauna retorted, pushing herself off the floor. I know. I would have been, but as I was coming home, I saw a bicycle in front of me with a girl on it. Jeanette crossed her arms. That UH was uncalled for, Jack said, looking genuinely offended. The only reason I noticed her at all was because her seat was jiggling all over the place. So, naturally, I had to follow her, right? I was worried about her. A loose seat can be very dangerous, especially with you behind it. Jean muttered dryly. That was unworthy of you. Johnny, Jack sighed, though he couldn't completely hide his smirk. I thought it was very good. Chrissy chimed in from the floor. Jack grabbed a hammer and a handful of upholstery tacks from the coffee table. All right, relax. You girls are lucky you've got a man around this house. Now, watch and learn. Fixing the couch is a man's job. He popped a handful of tacks into his mouth, holding them between his lips, and knelt beside the sofa. He positioned a tack, raised the hammer, and brought it down with a confident walk. Ouch! Jack muffled through the tacks. How can you talk so clearly with all those tacks in your mouth? Chrissy asked, leaning closer. I'll get you some water. No water. Jack mumbled frantically, waving his hands. The tacks will get rusty. After an hour of hammered thumbs, dropped tools, and structural failures, the trio decided to surrender. The couch looked worse than when they had started, sagging sadly in the middle like a tired hammock. I've had it with this couch, Jonna announced, tossing a pair of pliers onto the floor. We'll do the wallpaper instead. Oh, show it to him, Chrissy, Jonna said, her mood slightly lifting. This should be a thrill. Chrissy proudly unrolled a long sheet of paper. It was completely blank, beige, and entirely unremarkable. Jack stared at it. It's kind of plain, isn't it? That's the back. Dummy, Chrissy said cheerfully. I knew that. Jack lied. I like the back better. Jonna rubbed her temples, feeling the beginnings of a tension headache. All right, I will give you guys a choice. Fixing the couch, putting up the wallpaper, or going to the pub. I picked that one. Moving out, Jack yelled, already halfway to the door. 10 minutes later, they were sitting in a booth at the Regal Beagle, the dimly lit, smoke-filled neighborhood pub that served as their sanctuary. It smelled of stale beer, fried food, and cheap cologne, but to the exhausted roommates, it felt like paradise. Jack returned from the bar carrying 3 frosty mugs of beer. Here we go. A little work break. Well, I'm glad we came, John sighed, taking a sip. It beats fighting with upholstery. Just then, a shadow fell over their table. Jack looked up to see a man who appeared to be carved out of solid granite. He was at least 6'4", wearing a tight leather vest that showed off biceps the size of canned hams. He had a thick mustache and a gaze that swept over Jeanne and Chrissy with predatory slowness. "Hi, honey," the behemoth rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. He looked directly at Jeanne. "Buy you a drink?" Jeanne stiffened. "No, thanks." The man didn't move. He leaned a meaty hand on the edge of their table. "Go ahead. I'm really interested." Jack cleared his throat, sitting up straighter. "Excuse me." "Well, what I meant was," he started, trying to inject some authority into his voice. The man slowly turned his gaze to Jack. It was the look a lion might give a particularly annoying zebra. "I've always been partial to blondes," he said to Chrissy, ignoring Jack entirely. "That's nice," Chrissy said, offering a tight, nervous smile. "Have you thought about getting yourself a cocker spaniel?" The giant didn't laugh. He leaned closer to the girls. "Hey, you don't know what you're missing. I got a 35-foot cabin cruiser." "All right, take a cruise," Shauna snapped, her patience wearing thin. "Go with him, Jack." Jack swallowed hard. His mouth was suddenly incredibly dry. He stood up, puffing out his chest, though he barely reached the man's chin. "Listen, son, do me a favor." But out. The giant slowly turned to face Jack fully. He took a step forward, his massive chest nearly brushing Jack's nose. "And I think I should warn you," the man said softly, dangerously. "The last guy who warned me about something got all his teeth knocked out." Jack looked at the man's fists. They were the size of cantaloupes. He thought about his own dental work. He thought about the fact that he was an aspiring chef who needed the use of his hands. "Oh, well," Jack squeaked, his aggressive posture collapsing instantly. "I wouldn't want that to happen. My father paid a fortune for my braces." The giant smirked, satisfied. He looked back at Jeanne and Chrissy. "I'll be back here tomorrow, babe. But don't bring him along. He frightens me." With a low chuckle, the man turned and lumbered toward the bar. Jack slowly sat back down, avoiding the eyes of his roommates. The silence at the table was deafening. "Well," Jack said, his voice overly bright and artificially casual, "I didn't want to cause a scene. No sense in that, right?" "Right," Shauna said quietly, looking down at her beer. "You were perfectly right, Jack," Chrissy added, though she sounded entirely unconvincing. "I wasn't scared or anything. You did the right thing. You stood up to him." "Yes," Shauna murmured, taking a long sip of her drink. "And then you sat down again." Jack felt his face burn with shame. He had retreated. He had backed down in front of his roommates. The beer in his mug suddenly tasted very bitter. Chapter 6: The Coward of Santa Monica. The next morning, apartment 201 was enveloped in a suffocating blanket of gloom. The bright California sunshine streaming through the windows did nothing to lift Jack's spirits. He sat at the kitchen table, Staring blankly at the Sunday funnies, Jana walked into the kitchen, wearing her robe and